Hello all. This is a special modding video I wanted to make because when I was researching this particular topic, I couldn't find any information available on it. And this is a map I downloaded today that had the map buyable objects mod installed in it. There's this other map I want to play, the Glen Ellie map, and I called that there was this concept out there where you buy a map object that is embedded in the map, and until you buy it, it isn't available or it is inaccessible. So I downloaded a map. I didn't know how to use it, and I think all the instructions I was able to find on it is all in German or a language I don't understand. So I wanted to do a video that explained, at least in part, how to use it in English. So I want to just show something here. This is the Mayenberg map. I don't really know anything about it other than that it had this concept embedded in it. So you see here, and I'm not sure what this object is. Okay, so it must be a feeding cattle. So it's in the map, this building that allows for feeding of cattle. But you see there's a fence all around it here. So there is going to be, I think it's probably on this one here. Let me just click on that and let me see if it highlights the fence. Yeah, it highlights the fence. So the player, in order to interact with this mod, has to buy something that basically gets rid of the fence. I I believe there's a trigger, and if we look at it over here, we'll see there's a trigger right here. There's an icon with this building, and it's going to be spinning in game that basically is saying if you want to access this building, you have to pay a fee here. So everything on this particular object is controlled here. This trigger is this particular object here, and then all of these are laid out in a certain way. There's one for the icon, there's buy objects, there's delete objects, and in this one here, because we want to get rid of the fence, this is an object that will be deleted. So the barriers, if I highlight the barriers, that's going to be this fence all the way around. It's probably still going to be highlighted, which it is. So when money is paid here, it's going to delete or hide or however it works, get rid of the fence so the player can come in here and interact with the triggers and the building to run feeder cattle in there. So that's kind of the goal, and that's so there's various buckets you put things in, and I don't know how all of this works. All I know is that in Glen Ellie, I have a few areas that I want to use this concept, and I had the choice of either trying to write my own script or trying to use one that's already been written. The beauty of it is you don't have to embed anything particular in the map in terms of a script. It's all worked from outside of the map, but you do need to have these buyable object things in there. So like this one here, it's going to be calling the script that it needs down here. There's an on create, there's an XML path that defines, a number of the text things that are in it. You have to give it a name. And like I say, there's a number of things. I don't know what sounds mean or what the icon identity, what all that means. But you do identify where you would buy objects if there are any. These are the indexes. So if you come up to here, the index for the icon was always going to be, I believe, at index 0. Then buy objects is index 1. Delete objects would be index 2. So if you're putting in here 2, then it knows where to find the objects that need to be deleted. But apparently the icon is always going to be an index 0. So that's an example of delete objects, and then you'll notice there's a solar cells sitting on the roof of this building, and that's kind of an add-on later. You can earn a little bit extra money by putting those on there. So in that case, it's a um, buyable object, versus this other one, which is making the fence delete. This one is adding an object. So when you first go in game, this isn't going to just appear on the roof. You're going to have to buy it first by coming here and spending money. So you notice here, this one is set up the opposite. Now, instead of something in the delete category, you have something in the buy, which is this solar panel up here. You pay money, and then all of a sudden it's going to appear on the roof, and you're going to start receiving money for it. So that's kind of in concept, kind of how this thing is working. And of course, you identify the particular indices, that are important. And it also has this thing where you take the actual object, and I always wondered how they did this. This is the object here that's sitting on the roof. I'll just click on it here. And I think what they did is they duplicated it and they put it up here, kind of under the icon jumping. And the icon is going to be what appears. You'll see this is a teeny tiny little replica of what's up here. So I think they copied it and they put it up here. And you'll notice in the scaling that they took the object and set it down to a size of 0.08 scale. So that's kind of what they did here. That way the player knows in game when you come to the trigger and see this thing, spinning around or what have you, what the purpose is, if you will. So I've already just shared pretty much everything I know about it. I wanted to take this same concept and apply it in the Glen Ellie map. And so I've already done it on one particular object. I'm going to show how to do it with another one here shortly. Get myself a drink. Okay, now if we move to Glen Ellie, I just did it with the quarry bridge where I put this on a buyable type object arrangement. Apparently you also need a master trigger, which I'll click on it here. It takes up the entire map. If we zoom out, I really don't know what all it does. All I know is that the other map also had it in there, so I figure it needs to be there. Yeah, I won't even speculate on what it is. But here's like a simple situation of something else I'd like to do. This particular area of the map there's water down here. You can't really see it. I'm in the editor. You can kind of see it shimmer. But it leads to a place where there's a BGA down in an old quarry. There is a rock crusher that turns it into gravel and sand, and then there's a cement factory. So this is an area the player may want to come, and so for access to these factories, one of the things that needs to be done is to provide a bridge. This bridge, when you first start the game, isn't going to appear. So one of the things the player does here is purchase the bridge. Another thing that I'd like to make purchasable, at least for purposes of this example, are these concrete barriers, if you will. Right now, they're kind of just sitting there, but I figure that's kind of a luxury, if you will, to help guide you down the bridge. And so I want to make the player pay for them. And so right now, they are still set in the map wherever they are. So probably the easiest thing to do to create a new buy object, and I imported these, by the way, straight out of the map buyable object mod itself. Let me just drag it over here so you can kind of see. This, I extracted it and I put it in here so I could get at it. These are all the scripts. We don't need to do anything with those, but it has a buyable category or a folder rather. So there's an icon you can pull in. There is a master trigger. This is one that took up the whole map. But the one that I imported for The buyable bridge, if you will, is here. Now, I have modified a few other things in here to suit my purposes. For example, I'm going to transact things in dollars. So if there was going to be a hotspot icon, I wanted it to be dollars. I got rid of the head HUD. I replaced it with my own that'll be particular to the map. And I speak English, so I changed one of the HUDs here that kind of had hard-coded. I maybe it was in German, Kosten. I think that means cost. So I just changed it to spell it the way I would. So those are a couple little changes I made. I think I also changed one of the scripts just a little bit because it had embedded in it euros in it, and I changed it to dollars. So just some tweaks I made there, but primarily I'm pulling this one, I already put it in the map, that's sitting over here, and I pulled the sample here in for when I was working on this. But for the moment, I think what I'm gonna do to make a new one is just duplicate it. I'll go Control D, and that's gonna give me a second one. Now I'm gonna call this by object quarry barriers. I'll just give it a new name. And let me just open it up a little bit here. I got to figure out what all's in it and how to update it. So this is going to also be like buying a new object. So I want to um, identify buy objects. I want it to be here. There isn't anything that it's going to delete. Only I'm not going to have a bridge in there. These are on the old one, so well, maybe I better do it one at a time. I'm going to delete those out, and I'll delete this one, and you'll see it all stays right there because it's all up in this one here. I'm creating a new one. I want to change the name of it in here. So this index is okay. Everything else I think is okay. Although maybe, this was 1. Maybe I'll call this a 2. I think that's kind of how it came in. I want to call this the same title that I gave it up here, and I'll show you where that's used. So quarry barriers. I want to make sure I spell it properly. This is the same as the other one, and so what this is going to refer to is an XML file that will show what pops up in game. So before we do, well, maybe we'll finish the work in here before we go to the XML part. So I want to move these barriers into this transform group right here. And I don't necessarily know where they're at. So, okay, here they are. It appears we have 1, 2, that's where that one is. And I have a feeling these are the other 4 that are down there. And right now, they are, you look at the translate X, Y, Z, they are exactly on the map where they need to be. So we're going to need to take care that we keep them in the location they need to be. So I'm going to go Control X. We're going to pop them out of here, and I'm going to put them down here in by objects. Now you'll see that it took them and threw them way far over somewhere else on the map. So we're going to have to do a little bit of math if we want to get them to appear where we'd like to have them. So I'm going to pop this to the side, and let's get, I got an Excel spreadsheet over here. We're going to pop it over here. This is just a calculation. The old object, if we take this here and we pop it in 77, maybe there's a better way to do this, and someone will tell me, but if you want precision when you're using existing objects, this is the only way I know of. Oops, negative 96. 0.439, and that's to assess the change between the old object and the new. 674 minus 98.905. So the new object is, well, let's see. Right now, we have, let me just maximize this again. You know, I'm not sure this is where I want this to sit. This already has a bridge icon here, so I think maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this at the other end of the bridge, and we'll have the barrier purchase happen here. So I'm going to go Control B and put it right here. So now it should appear here, and I believe the icons should all be positioned, including this. I'm not sure what this is here. New carrier start point. I don't think we need to do anything with that. We just need to have our objects show up where they need it. So I relocated this. So I think this is where I want the box to be, or the icon rather. So I'm going to look at my new location, and let me coordinate this over to here. So the new location is going to be keyed off of this. And because this is higher in the transform group parenting, that's why we need to update the locations of all of these, because these locations are keying off of this. And so we can leave them when they were keying off of something previously. So that's kind of what we're figuring out here. This is the old. The new is, let's see here, this is at 101, 393, 25, 441, 716. So this is going to give us our new location. And maybe what we're seeing is I don't think there's going to be any changes in rotation here. So we probably don't need to enter those in. But we'll go down here to this one, and we'll see if we did this right. This is the first. So we're going to go minus 23.425. We're going to go 3.505. And hopefully all these numbers are showing up in the video. 20.437. Now let's check. With a little bit of luck, this barrier should show, and it does. That's basically exactly where we had it in the first place. So I think we can follow that approach for the rest of them. The next one should appear right here, right? So we'll look at this, and let's pop up our, we're still keying off at this new position. We no longer need the rotation, so we're gonna go 84.38, 28.377, minus 416.479, and this is going to give us updated coordinates for the second one, and we will change this to minus 17.013, 3.377, and 25.237. And once again, we see that this shows about exactly where we had it placed previously. Just enough that if the player wants to a little bit of guidance to make sure they don't fall off and into the drink, this will help point them onto this rickety old bridge. Of course, they need to buy the bridge first, and then over here they would have to buy these concrete abutments. So this is working great, I think. So let's get the others done. We'll go to this one. And I'm sorry if this is a little tedious, but this is kind of part of modding. And just some of the things we need to do when we want. And I could, I suppose, move them around, replace them and everything, but I would prefer to have them exactly where I had them before. And doing it this way, by just doing a little bit of math, helps us get them to where they were. So once again, we'll just check this. Yep, that's exactly where we wanted to have it. So 3 down and 3 to go. And they're all keying off of this particular parent object. So we'll keep up what we're doing. 107.977, 24.186 minus 440.577. And this is going to change these. You'll notice the numbers are getting smaller. That's because these are in close proximity to where the trigger is, or close proximity to the parent object X placement already. So these aren't very far away. Again, we'll look at it, and there it is, the second one kind of smashed right in there. That's exactly what we wanted to see. So we'll head back over again and go to the fifth and put those coordinates in. 98.024, 24.882, minus 443.722, and now we'll update them. These are all negative. We'll get them in. Just a barely change on that one. Minus 2.006. Again, a check. There it is. I think I'm seeing a pattern here. I think our little formulas are working, so we'll do it one more time on this barrier here. Enter the old coordinates, get the updates. 956 minus 447, and one last time we'll update them. 4.691 minus 0.00, oops, that would be good, 044, then minus 5.892. And I believe that is where we had them. Now, what we would like to do is use one of these objects, kind of like how we did here for this bridge. Now, you'll notice these are rigid bodies, meaning they are static shapes. They can't be moved. Obviously, in real life, they could be moved. But we're going to have to change it at, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this so we have something to use. So I'm going to duplicate it. It's going to put it at the bottom here. It'll add a 7th. I'm going to just cut and we'll paste it up here with the icon. And what we're going to do is we're going to change it to 0, because what we wanted to do is appear right over here where the trigger was. So we're going to go 0, 0, 0, and there it appears. We're also going to get rid of all rotation so that it just appears there. That almost looks like it isn't sitting level, does it? But once again, it's a rigid body. We don't want it to be rigid because this icon is going to be turning in game. So we want to take off a rigid body. Now we want to shrink it, and we'll call it 0.08 scale, and that's pretty teeny tiny. Maybe we'll make it a little bit bigger. How about 18.1? Does that look about right? Or do we want to go, how about 0.25? Just big enough so that we see it. And I think we'll put it kind of up in the air so it'll be spinning around and the player will see it, when they come in game. You know something, it appears, well, that's all right. I was going to say these are a little bit embedded versus these here, which are a little bit up. But I think that'll be okay. I'm generally pleased kind of where they're placed. So this is going to be an icon that will turn, and we'll look here, or you could have it jump. I think it's set up. We'll look at the attributes here. and see, yeah, the icon identified object is at index 1, which is this one here, and it's set up to rotate, has the on create bit that will handle that. So we have our icon, it's positioned right, we have the objects to buy, there's nothing to delete, and we'll just make sure we have this set up properly up here before we save it. So buy objects in index 1, and I believe that's all we need to set up. Object identification icon. I changed this to 2, but I really don't know what this does. So we're going to find out in game what happens here. And it appears this will give it a hotspot icon. That means it'll put it on the PDA map where this is to alert the player that there's a buyable object. I think we can change that particular icon, but we'll see what that does in game also. So now what we want to do is go do the work we need to do in the XML. When the player walks up to this, into this trigger, and the trigger, by the way, is set up for the player to walk up into it. That's what this collision mask is. I think number 20 must be when the player comes in. So I don't think you can do it in a vehicle. I believe you need to walk up to it. But there's going to be an overlay that appears on the game screen that says, do you want to buy this, or what are your intentions with this, if that makes sense. So we need to go define all that in the XML. So I'm going to pull that up. And the one we currently have in there is for the bridge. So I'm going to just copy and we're going to paste. This is exactly everything that's like it, but remember this was buy object query barriers. So I'm going to change it to barriers. And this is going to be critical that we have it exactly the same. You need the 2 different tags in the XML so that we know it. But we want to make sure we spell that right. So this is buy object query barriers. This is where it's going to identify the tag to look for in our XML file, which is right here. This is a HUD that I made, and let me see, can I pull that up? It's somewhere. I think I put it within, map, buyable. It's just a simple little HUD. I have a puppy. Well, you can't hardly see the text on there, but that's going to appear on the object in game. And this is going to tell it kind of where to appear. I didn't change any of these things here in terms of location, bolding, or colors. None of that stuff. So now we need to choose the price. For the bridge, I thought it would cost about 100,000. Maybe for these barriers, I don't know. Maybe we should say it's 5,000. Is that a reasonable price? I have no idea what those would cost in real life. Instead of query bridge, these are going to be called query barriers. This is text that's going to appear in the overlay that appears in game. Then there's, and like I say, probably you could tweak stuff in here all day long, but I didn't mess with that. You'll see a little bit later where it is. It's all makes it customizable, if you will. So here, this one was purchasing the bridge. If you want access to the BGA, Rock Crusher, and so forth, you need to install a bridge. So this one here, if you'd like some protection in traveling across the bridge, you can install a few concrete barriers to help you out. Good enough, huh? So we're going to hit save on this. This file is called from, that's maybe one other thing I'll point out. You need to tell it where the file is, map, buyable help text. That's exactly, what we have going on here. It's going to use the same HUD that we're using on this one up here. So I'm going to head in game real quick. Now, hopefully I saved this. Maybe I didn't have the presence of mind to save it. I need to save the work here, so it's going to take a little bit to save it in the map. It's my bad. I should have saved it before I did the XML stuff. Let that think on itself. Takes just a minute or two. And there's a lot of stuff on here. Maybe some of you noticed that when I click on things, it takes a little while to make it respond, and it would truly be terrible if I had all the trees in here. Sometimes, especially on these older versions of the Giants editor, I don't know how it is in 22, FarmSim 22, which is the most recent, but especially in these old ones, the more objects you piled into the editor, the longer it can take, just trying to click on something in the scenograph, and it takes forever. One of the things I learned is I put all of the cuttable trees in its own transform group, and then I exported them all so that so I could take them off the map temporarily. And then when I'm ready to finalize the map, I'll bring them all in and save it. But otherwise, it just becomes brutal sitting there and waiting for the editor to recognize what you've done. So that's kind of just a little trick that I would use to do that. All right, we're in game. It's going to pop a message as soon as it opens up for us here. And it's going to ask us a question. It shows our little icon in there. We didn't really do anything with this, but we can choose to use buyable objects. So I'm going to say yes. And we don't have enough. Well, I guess we do have enough money. So I'm gonna teleport down there, and I'm gonna go right over here where I know it's kind of, whoops. Here we go. Okay, so there is our spinning icon, and remember, the bridge is also a buyable object, so it doesn't appear here at the moment because we haven't bought it, and as you'll see, we don't have $100,000 to be able to do so. Let me just make sure we're not popping an error. So if we walk to the trigger, here's what it's going to show us. We got our little icon up at the top with our puppy on it. It's quarry barriers like we identified in the XML. This is rendering all this stuff. And there's the text that we put in there. Pink, I'm not sure I'm real wild about some of the color options in here. But then we have down below, there's the cost we put in there, and you can preview it. So we'll just hit B, and B allows us to kind of see what they look like. And there they are. It puts them all where they would be. It leaves them that way for about 10 seconds, and then they'll disappear. And so if we want them to stay there, we're going to have to spend the money. So we'll go C, and that's going to put them in place. And there's our trusty sheep that mods installed. And I do wonder why the icon is still there. That makes me wonder if we need to figure out how to get that to go away. But this is how you do that. They're hard objects. They're not going to go anywhere. So let me see if it's popping an error. Nope, no error. That's kind of an overview of how to work with a buyable object, if you will, in game and in the editor and install them to a map. Just a little bit of XML, a little bit of work in the editor to put it in there, and the script takes care of everything else. I presume if we would save the game at this point, it would keep all of this in here, and it would appear the next time we opened our save game. At least ways it's sure better. I do know I'll need to look at the ad and see if I can get that icon to go away. There might be something I need to do on the ad. I'm not sure what the ad will take at the moment. But there's plenty of other things I'd like to do. Over kind of in this area, we have an orchard. I think it's a plum orchard and cherries, perhaps. And right now, it's all freely available yeah, this is plums, I think, in here. All freely available. There's cherries. And anybody can just come up here and do it. So what I'd like to do is put a barrier in here that denies access to the player until they pay a fee. They're going to buy the orchard just like that they would buy a regular field, like this field out here. Yeah, look at that field. When I start playing this map, we got rocks galore in there that we need to take care of and address. But that's another option I'd like to do, is just to close this gap until the player pays for what they're going to be using in here. And there's any number of other areas to do it. You consider a factory or that kind of thing. Whether like there's a distillery. Where's a distillery? Over here. So before you just come up here and you use the distillery and turn it into whiskey, I think the players should pay a fee before they're allowed to just drop that off and take advantage of the products here. And that kind of helps fix an issue, I guess. So many times when factories are installed in the map that are freely available to the player, and maybe it's presumed, that someone else owns them. But really, I mean, the only cost of input that the player has is just to bring product to it. So forcing the player to pay something to have rights to use it in the first place, might add a little dimension to the game, if you will. So I'm going to try to do that with buyable objects. So there's a brief overview of it. Hopefully it was helpful to somebody. Like I say, I couldn't find anything out there that was in a language that I understood, so I wanted to try to figure it out and share a little bit on a video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye for now.